Easy Explain Cartesianism, Meditations on First Philosophy, the Third Meditation. And this one has the topic of the existence of God, and we can go even a little further here and say the necessary existence of God. This is going to get very technical. Descartes' going to make quite a big argument here that God must exist. So here for the first time I'm actually including some citations, so just so you know what edition, what translation I'm pulling from and how I'm going to cite them in case you want to go to the source yourself. I think it could help here for sure. Because like I said, as we get into this, we're going to make the argument for how and why God must exist. And before we get into this, we really need to understand three key concepts. At least I think this is the bare minimum of what we need to kind of break down before we can reconstruct the argument. And they are the concepts of formal reality, objective reality, and what Descartes means by God, what we're actually trying to argue for the necessary existence of. So the first key concept, that of formal reality. I did take some quotes here from the text, and I did try to paraphrase them to put them into a more lucid description or definition here. But in sum, when we're talking about formal reality, we're talking about the true, actual reality behind the world, literal reality. And this is something that we can't always grasp 100% for sure, but it is there in its pure, perfect state. And Descartes is going to take this all the way to say the most perfect degree of formal reality is God. God is the epitome of formal reality. And this actually informs everything that we experience. Think about our thoughts and our ideas and our experience kind of sitting on the surface level of formal reality. And here's a quote directly from Descartes of what this could mean. He says, the formal mode of being belongs to the causes of ideas, or at least the first and foremost important ones, by their very nature. So all of our ideas, or at least our most fundamental and important ideas, are the effects of formal reality. Formal reality is the cause of everything that we think. So, for example, looking at Descartes' idea of I think, therefore I am, his most clear and distinct idea, this is coming from formal reality, right? So this is just a summary of this idea that I put here. Our first and most important ideas are caused by formal reality. So formal reality is the cause of all of our effects. Our ideas are the effects of formal reality. Speaking of, very related note, the second key concept I think we need before we can get into this argument of understanding where Descartes is here is objective reality. And this is essentially what he's calling the representational world. Or in other words, your ideas, right? It's how we represent formal reality. Formal reality is kind of hard to grasp, but we get representations of it as our ideas, right? That's how we experience it. We experience it objectively in this way, representationally in this way. And again, I have a quote here directly from Descartes that might help to elucidate this. Descartes says, eventually one must reach a primary idea, the cause of which will be like an archetype, which contains formally and in fact all the reality or perfection, which is only present objectively or representationally in the idea. So again here, formal reality is archetypal, it is true, it is perfect, but we really experience the objective reality, this representational reality, the reality of our ideas. And sometimes you get to an idea that's pure enough and real enough that we actually are tapping into formal reality. We're actually realizing that it's true, it's clear and distinct, and we're kind of breaking through between the realities. So again, from this, just to sum this up, what this really means here in terms of the argument, if there is an idea of perfection, then it must be caused by a perfect reality. Right? So if I have this idea of a perfect being, like God per se, then God must have some kind of perfect reality, informal reality. So that brings us to the third key concept of just how Descartes is defining God and what we're actually trying to argue for. So here's his definition. By the word God, I understand a substance that is infinite, eternal, immutable, independent, supremely intelligent, otherwise omniscient, supremely powerful, otherwise omnipotent, and which created both myself and everything else, if anything else there be, that exists. Right, so Descartes still calling into question, maybe we don't know everything that exists. I know I exist because I'm thinking. But when I say God, I mean the creator of everything I know to be real and true. Right, so we kind of see a kind of a classic Judeo-Christian definition there. So now that we have the concepts of formal reality, objective reality, and God, I think it makes a little more sense to try to reconstruct Descartes' argument that God must exist. So I broke it down into 9 premises followed by a conclusion. As you can see, for each premise I have the citation from the text I'm pulling it from, And when it arises, I'm also including the premises that certain premises follow from. For example, here premise 3 follows from premise 1 and 2. So let's just read through these, and hopefully you'll start to get the logical continuation here. So premise 1, something cannot arise from nothing. Premise 2, causes possess realities. Premise 3, effects get their realities from their causes. Premise 4, something that contains in itself more reality cannot arise from something that contains in itself less reality. Right? So if you have this idea of something absolutely perfect, it can't come from something that's not absolutely perfect. And premise 5 is going to be very similar to that. There must be at least as much reality in the cause as there is in the effect. Premise 6, the reality of ideas is caused by something which contains at least as much reality. These are all kind of similar, right? We're kind of taking logical baby steps here. Premise 7, I have an idea of God as absolute perfection. That just goes back to his definition of what he is conceiving God to be. Premise 8, the idea of God as absolute perfection is caused by something that is at least absolutely perfect. It must be, according to Descartes' definitions of formal reality and objective reality, and what his definition of God is. That has to be the case if you're following his argument. So moving to premise 9, the idea of God cannot be caused by my mind because my mind is not absolutely perfect. So if I have this idea of absolute perfection, it can't be coming from me because I know that I am not absolutely perfect. So where must it be coming from? It must be coming from an absolutely perfect formal reality. And Descartes is going to call that God. So our conclusion here, that God necessarily exists. This is a quote from Descartes himself. Kind of put some premises together. We have it cited for you in the text. I hope this helps.